So, going off of a lot of interviews that I heard from the band throughout the years, as well as lived experience, I know for a fact that back in the day, it was kind of a thing where people were thinking, like, girls can't really rock.
What kind of reactions do you get from guys? Because it's not often guys in audiences get to see really hard rocking, rolling ladies.
Men aren't used to seeing women actually be musicians, too, as well as rock and rollers.
And I always thought that was weird. I heard a lot of the older teenage kids saying that kind of stuff. But when I grew up, the times I grew up, I remember being introduced to rock by a lot of female artists. So I recall videos from like Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll was a huge one. We had artists like Pat Benatar and the Pretenders. But the artist that stood out the most to me as far as having female rockers was the band Heart. And I didn't see any videos from them way back in the early days, but what I did do is heard a lot of their songs on the local radio station KQRS. They would sometimes play Barracuda and then Magic Man as well, and I always looked forward to hearing those songs. Back then we had no choice, we just had to listen to whatever the radio was going to play for us. So as soon as I heard that opening bend to Magic Man, I would just get chills. And to tell you the truth, when I play that song live today, I still feel that way. I used to get a magazine called 16 Magazine because I love the band Kiss, and back then we didn't have the internet, so anything I could get about Kiss, I would just, absorb. And what I would do is I would flip through the magazine and cut out pictures of Kiss and super glue it to my wall, my bedroom wall. My dad was so mad when I did that, but, that's how big of a fan I was. And in that same issue, I believe they had a picture of Heart, and I recall really thinking, Nancy and Ann were good looking, even though I was really young, and the rest of the band I didn't pay attention to too much. I just knew that they had beards. So eventually when I heard Crazy on You and I heard that awesome acoustic intro, I just assumed that it was one of the bearded guys that played the intro. I was under the impression that the girls in the band only sang. Now, I really wasn't some sexist preteen or anything. I just wasn't exposed to a lot of artists back then. So to me, the lead guitar players, the guys that could really shred were guys like Ace Frehley from Kiss, and guys like Ted Nugent, because my dad would listen to Ted, and also Eddie Van Halen, of course. So it was kind of hard for me to picture someone like Nancy Wilson playing an intro to the song, Crazy on You. But that all changed the moment I happened to see this footage. Is from a live concert from Heart, and Nancy does this incredible intro. She doesn't just do what's on the song, she actually adds a lot more to it, so it's pretty in-depth. If you could ever check it out in its entirety, I recommend it. It's like a legendary clip. And my favorite part is after the intro when she kicks into the main chords of the song, and all of a sudden just she kicks her leg up and it's so epic, and then Roger Fisher appears like almost out of nowhere behind her. It's crazy. Anyhow, my respect for Nancy increased like 1,000-fold right when I saw that footage. And I wasn't alone in this. I would talk to my friends about that intro, and we were all in agreement that it's epic. But not a lot of them knew that it was actually Nancy who played that. They were always pleasantly surprised, and they were like, oh man, that makes me think completely different about this whole band. And then later when I started to learn guitar, it was always in the back of my mind that I knew I had to learn that eventually. So we didn't have great tab or anything, so I had to do a lot of things piece by piece. So over the years, I kind of learned a weird Frankenstein version of that intro. I mentioned the weird way I play this song. I actually use a pick for the whole thing. Nancy uses a thumb pick, I believe, from what I can see in the footage, and her fingers. And I will use a little bit of the Travis picking thing she's doing, but not as much as her. Here's why. When I play it with my fingers, I've never been able to grow out my fingernails successfully. I went through a flamenco stage where I tried to, and they would just break off. I don't have the best nails for that. So every time I would play, it would feel kind of dull, like... See that? Now compare it to if I just use my pick. See, there's a lot more attack if I play it that way. Once again with the fingers. See, it just doesn't stand out as much as when I use the pick, so I opted to go with that. But in doing so, I've had to modify it. And it's not as cool as when Nancy does it, because she has, the attack, and she also has that real down-picking thing going on, because she could do the Travis picking really well for this. What I could do to avoid copyright issues is I could walk you through the intro instead of just playing it, but I want to show you why I believe it's so legendary. First of all, there's a lot of bluesy Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff going on. So even just the very intro... it's got that shuffly SRV feel. So that's the rhythm feel of it, and I love that. Reminds me of Pride and Joy. Keeping that kind of feel going, she's doing all this intricate stuff, including this wild pull-off. It'd be a lot easier if it was just a eighth note triplet, but it wouldn't be nearly as interesting as cramming 4 notes above that instead. Then this slide gives you that tension that I love. Then some SRV bounce, and then a couple of. That I had to learn from the VHS tape.
A lot of people always ask me, how does that go?
I never knew she went like that. That makes it really cool. Now this first opening phrase, she keeps going back to it. Not this part, but this part. She keeps going back to that every other time. And that's great because it creates this foundation, like this home base, that allows her to, go off a little bit every other time, and it makes it interesting and it builds up, but it still stays familiar. It's a really cool composition trick. So the first variation's pretty intense, speaking of SRV. It goes like this. Isn't that crazy? This whole... By the way, I'm not here to teach it to you. I'm just showing you what I think are the cool parts. I'll probably teach this on my website coming up because I'm really getting into doing the details for this now. So huge, that G chord with a pull off like that. Then back to home bass again. Now another variation. Now this one climbs in a really cool way. She throws in these harmonics so aggressively. If you see it live, she really goes off on that. Back to home bass. And then I think the third phrase goes like this. So it's a little bit of a break because you could just hammer on those. And now things get a little bit more weird. It's a cool little backwards scale. Now, her new bass note is going to be F sharp for a second. This is probably the hardest part for me to do. So you got to still do that same A minor thing, but now your bass note is F sharp. It's really hard to get that as clean as if you do the open, because it's fretted. It's a very strange feeling. I tried using my thumb before. I did a whole bunch of stuff, but this just seems to work the best. She does that too, a little bit of a hammer on that G sharp to give it sort of a, sort of a Western feel, if you will. And then it's a cool way to harmonize a chord. Just play the chord and then skip a string. So this is where I do use a little bit of hybrid picking. Sounds great. And now the tail end of this, I've been doing wrong for years. I just learned the right way yesterday by watching the video. So I've been going like this. Something close to that. It's fun to play it that way, actually. When you watch her in the video, she's doing this. It didn't occur to me that she isn't playing a full chord at the end on the recorded version. She's just hitting that low E at the bottom. I bet you a lot of people are wondering why I didn't just use the Nancy Wilson guitar for this video. It's because it's actually a baritone guitar. So it's tuned really low, so it wouldn't have worked for this particular video about Crazy on You. But I did do a full video on this guitar and how I got it and all that cool stuff. So check that out. I'll put the link to it in the description. Okay, everyone, have a good one, and we'll see you at the next video. I have one more acoustic intro video that I have planned out. It'll probably come out in the next few weeks, so we'll see you there. Okay, bye-bye.